You cannot be here," Helen whispered, her hands trembling as she held the blunt dagger against the bloody stranger's chest. His golden eyes slowly opened, piercing her soul with an intensity that made her heart race. "Mom, he's dying," Leo pleaded behind her. The giant man murmured something about betrayal and a throne in flames before collapsing again. Helen knew that saving him could destroy her family, but letting him die could destroy her soul. The howling wind of Broken Fang Mountain cut her skin like blades of ice on that cursed winter night. Helen pulled her tattered shawl tighter against her lean body, her frozen fingers digging into the frozen earth in search of any root that could feed her children for one more night. 30 years of life had carved deep furrows into her face, not merely from time, but from the constant worry that gnawed at a single mother trying to keep 3 children alive in a world that showed no mercy to the weak. "Please," she murmured to the relentless wind. "Just one root. Anything." Her tears froze the instant they touched her cheeks. Leo, her brave 8-year-old boy, had pretended not to be hungry for the 3rd consecutive day, pushing his own portion of thin soup towards the younger twins, Mia and Sam, who were only 5. His pride broke Helen's heart, for in that selflessness, she recognized the same silent strength that had characterized her late husband. The metallic scent hit her nostrils even before she saw the carnage. Blood. So much blood. Helen froze, every instinct screaming at her to run, but her feet remained glued to the snow-covered ground as her eyes found the scene before her. A man of impossible proportions lay fallen among the trees, his shattered armor gleaming under the faint moonlight. It was no common iron. Helen, daughter of a skilled smith, immediately recognized the refined moon silver, a metal that cost more than her family would see in 10 lifetimes. The stranger was immense, his muscles tensed even in unconsciousness, and there was something about him that made the surrounding air vibrate with contained power. His dark hair was matted to his scalp with dried blood, and deep wounds adorned his naked torso where the armor had been torn by claws no ordinary animal possessed. But when his eyes opened for a fraction of a second, Helen felt the world stop. Golden. Liquid as molten gold and wild as the storm itself. Yet they carried something she recognized viscerally, the same desperation she saw in the mirror every morning. A silent plea for help that pierced straight through her carefully constructed defenses and touched a part of her soul she had kept buried for years. "Help me." The words emerged as a nearly inaudible whisper from his cracked lips, but Helen heard them as if they were a scream. Then his eyes closed again, and she was left alone with a decision that would change everything. Dragging 260 pounds of muscle and metal up the mountain should have been impossible for an undernourished woman. But desperation grants supernatural strength to mothers, and Helen discovered reserves of determination she never knew she possessed. With each agonizing step through the deep snow, she murmured prayers to saints she had stopped believing in years ago. Her back screamed in agony, her lungs burned in the freezing air, but she never stopped once. When she finally reached her cabin, a rotting wooden structure barely worthy of being called a home, her children's reaction determined all their fates. "Mom, he's hurt!" Leo ran to her without hesitation, his big eyes shining with compassion instead of fear. In his small arms, he carried all the clean rags they possessed, offering them without question. Mia and Sam, the twins who rarely separated, rushed to their own beds and tore off their only blankets, those full of holes, but still able to provide some warmth. "He's cold," Mia said simply, covering the stranger's legs with her favorite blanket, the one with faded flower prints she cuddled every night to sleep. Tears burned Helen's eyes as she watched her babies, who knew hunger as a constant companion, offer everything they had to save a stranger. In that moment, she knew she had made the right decision, no matter the cost. The man was burning with fever, his skin radiating enough heat to melt the snow that still clung to his hair. The wounds on his torso exhaled a sweetish odor that made Helen's stomach churn. Aconite. Lethal poison for his kind. Wait. How did she know that? buried memories began to stir at the periphery of her mind. Whispers of knowledge her late husband had planted there during nightly conversations she had always assumed were just fantastical stories. Thomas spoke of wolves that walked as men, of herbs that could kill supernatural creatures, of a secret war happening in the shadows of the human world. "Just fairy tales, my love," she used to laugh, nestling against his broad chest. Now, looking at the stranger's infected wounds, these fairy tales felt terrifyingly real. Helen rushed to the small cabinet where she kept her homemade remedies. Deep within, dusty and nearly forgotten, lay her last reserves of moonroot, plants Thomas had taught her to identify, which she religiously saved to treat Sam's persistent chronic cough. They were her only shield against losing another family member to illness. Her hands trembled as she prepared the paste, knowing she was expending the only medicine she possessed on a stranger who could awaken and kill them all. But when she looked at her children, watching over the wounded man with tender care, she knew she had no choice. They had taught her that humanity was worth more than mere survival. That night, the family subsisted on warm water seasoned with meager hope, while the true stew, made with the only dried meat left for the entire month, was carefully coaxed down the stranger's throat. Helen fed him spoon by spoon, her fingers occasionally brushing his lips as she wiped away the dribbling liquid. With each touch, an electric current coursed through her skin, leaving her breathless. When he unconsciously gripped her wrist during a moment of delirium, the heat of his fingers burned like a brand, awakening something deep and primal within her that she did not comprehend. Helen withdrew her hand, trembling, her heart pounding, unable to grasp why a stranger's mere touch was igniting her senses so perilously. The following 3 days passed in a haze of constant vigil. Winter had completely isolated the cabin from the rest of the world with snow piled to the windows, creating a cocoon of silence where only the stranger's ragged breaths and the children's worried whispers broke the quiet. Helen slept in a chair beside the makeshift bed, waking with every shift in his breathing. During his feverish delusions, he spoke in a guttural voice of traitors and burning thrones. Names she did not recognize spat out like curses. Malachar, you will pay. My kingdom. Words that danced at the edge of consciousness like fragments of a nightmare. It was on the 4th day that everything changed. Helen was trying to coax Sam into eating his small portion of porridge when she heard movement behind her. When she turned, she found herself face to face with the most intense eyes she had ever seen. Golden as molten metal. Yet there was something wrong. They moved unfocused, searching for something they could not find. Where am I? His voice was deep as the distant rumble of thunder, but there was a vulnerability in it that belied his intimidating size. You are safe, Helen replied softly, instinctively keeping her voice low so as not to startle the children. You were wounded. We found you in the forest. Dorian, though she did not yet know his name, attempted to sit, but the temporary blindness, a consequence of wolfsbane poisoning, left him disoriented. For the first time in centuries of existence, the Lycan King of the Northern Territories was utterly vulnerable. He had expected to awaken in a torture cell, or perhaps in hell itself, but instead, his senses were inundated by scents that both confounded and soothed his inner beast. Dry lavender, burnt wood, and something more profound. Mother's milk, a maternal sweetness, a fragrance that eased his predatory soul in a way he had never before experienced. When the woman spoke again, her voice carried not the fearful submission he was accustomed to inspiring, but genuine weariness mingled with warm care. The food is gone, she stated simply, without apology or dramatic lament. But we still have some broth. You need to eat to regain your strength. Dorian, accustomed to courtiers who offered elaborate feasts in hopes of gaining political favor, felt the weight of that revelation like a punch to the gut. This woman and her children had literally given everything they possessed, risking starvation, for a stranger who could destroy their lives with a casual gesture. It was then that he attempted to employ his command voice, that ancestral power which commanded obedience even from the most alpha Lycans. "Tell me where I am, now." The words emerged, but without their usual supernatural weight. Just words, human, fragile. The poison had severed his connection to the inner wolf. For the first time in 300 years of existence, Dorian was merely a man, mortal, dependent. The realization struck him like a bolt of lightning, awakening a terror he had not felt since he was a defenseless pup. "You are on Broken Fang Mountain," the woman replied, seemingly oblivious to his failed attempt at dominance. "My name is Helen. These are my children, Leo, Mia, and Sam." Each name was spoken with a fierce love, a mother introducing her most cherished treasures. In the days that followed, Dorian experienced a life his royal position had never allowed. He heard Helen mending his clothes during the cold nights, using threads from her own wedding dress, the only valuable possession she owned apart from her children. He felt Leo approach each morning to check if he was still breathing, the boy assuming responsibilities no child should bear. He watched Mia divide her small rag doll between himself and Sam, whispering to the toy that the big man needs someone to care for him too. He observed Sam, the smallest and frailest, offering his own meals whenever Dorian coughed, his tiny hands trembling as he extended the bowl. For the first time in centuries, Dorian understood what it truly meant to be part of a royal family, not a dynasty built on power and fear, but a unit forged in sacrificial love and mutual protection. They had nothing, yet they shared everything. They knew nothing of his title, yet they treated him as true royalty. The fragile peace shattered when Helen returned from the market in Winter's Pass, her face ashen as the falling snow. She had ventured down to trade one of Dorian's ornate armor buckles for flour, an immense risk, for the piece was obviously too valuable for a woman of her station to possess. "There are soldiers in the village," she whispered, checking to ensure the children couldn't hear. "They're looking for someone. They say the werewolf king is dead, but there's a bounty on his head if anyone finds the body." Dorian's blood ran cold. He had assumed his loyal men were searching for him. Instead, he discovered his own uncle, the Regent Malachar, had declared him dead and placed a price on his head. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical blade, for it confirmed his worst fears. He had been brought down by his own family. "They cannot find you here," Helen continued, her voice firm despite the obvious terror in her eyes. "If they discover we saved you, they will kill the children too." It was then Dorian understood the true extent of Helen's sacrifice. She had not merely risked starvation to save him, she had risked her children's lives. And now, even knowing the danger, she was not suggesting surrender. She was planning to protect him. "Why?" he asked, his voice raw with emotion. "Why risk everything for a stranger?" Helen looked through the small window to where her children played in the snow, building a clumsy snowman with sticks and stones. "Because that is how we build a world where my children can grow up safe, by doing the right thing, even when it costs us dearly." The escape began the following night, under the shroud of a blizzard that made it impossible to see beyond a few feet. Dorian, still with compromised vision and reduced strength, had to swallow his pride and accept that he depended completely on Helen's guidance. She knew every secret trail, every hidden cave, every shortcut through the treacherous mountains that had been her home all her life. Leo carried a backpack larger than himself, his small legs struggling through the deep snow without a single complaint. The twins took turns carrying the few supplies they possessed, their occasional laughter cutting through the wind like reminders that hope still existed, even amidst adversity. During the weeks of travel across the hostile terrain, the dynamic between Helen and Dorian transformed from caregiver and patient into something far more intricate. She was not merely a desperate woman fighting for survival. She was a natural strategist, making life-or-death decisions with the cold composure of a seasoned general. When trackers cornered them in a narrow cave during one of the coldest nights, it was Helen who devised the escape plan. When their food reserves dwindled, It was she who found edible plants hidden beneath the snow that kept everyone fed. When Dorian nearly collapsed from exhaustion, refusing to admit weakness, it was she who discreetly distributed the weight of his pack among the children so he could continue without losing his dignity. But it was during the tracker werewolf's attack that everything irrevocably changed. They were resting in a cavern when the wild scent assailed Dorian's nostrils. His inner werewolf, still blocked by residual poison, could not emerge to defend them. The predator that sprang from the shadows was immense, its eyes gleaming with cruel intelligence as it moved directly toward Mia, who had separated from the group to gather kindling for the fire. Helen moved without thought, placing herself between the child and the lethal claws. What happened next defied everything Dorian thought he knew about reality. The growl that emanated from Helen's throat was not human. Deep, resonant, and laden with ancient authority, it made the very air vibrate with power. Her eyes did not shift color. They remained the warm brown he had come to love. But the aura she projected was unequivocally supernatural. The attacking werewolf halted mid-leap, as if it had struck an invisible wall. Its forepaws trembled as it fought against a force compelling it to submission. The atmospheric pressure in the cavern shifted, becoming dense and charged like the air before a storm. Helen was dominating an alpha predator without even shifting form. It was a legendary ability Dorian had only heard whispered in tales by the elders, the pure Omega's voice, a defensive power that had been extinct for decades when the last pure bloodlines were hunted to oblivion. "Go!" she commanded, and the werewolf retreated, whimpering like a chastised pup before vanishing into the night. Helen collapsed to the ground, the effort draining all her energy, but her children rushed to her with tender care instead of fear. They had grown up instinctively knowing their mother was special, even if they didn't understand how. Dorian knelt beside her, his hands trembling as he helped her to sit up. "You are Lycan." It was not a question, but an affirmation whispered with reverence and shock. "Pure Omega lineage. How is it possible?" "I don't know," Helen whispered, her voice faint but honest. "Thomas, my husband. He told me my family had been killed when I was a baby, that someone had sealed my wolf to protect me. I always thought they were just stories to comfort me." The realization struck Dorian like an avalanche. The magnetic pull he felt toward her, the way his beast quieted in her presence, the ease with which he had begun to trust her. It wasn't just gratitude. It was a mate bond. Impossible, he thought, due to his cursed lineage. As Helen looked at him, still trembling from the exertion of using her powers, there was something feral and primal gleaming in her eyes that made every alpha wolf instinct within him roar with recognition and forbidden desire. She was not merely a vulnerable woman needing protection. She was a force of nature, an Omega whose power complemented his, her nearness making his skin tingle. For one perilous moment, he wanted to pull her against him and mark that delicate throat, claim her before the entire pack. The thought terrified him as much as it thrilled him, for it meant everything he thought he knew about himself was wrong. Lycan Kings did not find true mates. They took political consorts, produced heirs for dynastic continuity, but never experienced the soul-to-soul bond that commoners sometimes had the fortune to find. His lineage carried an ancient curse, too much power to allow for the vulnerability of true love. But Helen was no commoner. She was lost royalty, an Omega whose power complemented his instead of competing. And her children. Dorian looked at Leo, Mia, and Sam, who had formed a protective circle around Helen, and saw in them the fierce courage and instinctive loyalty of true Lycans. They were his chosen pack, bound not by blood, but by love. The arrival at Emberwood Hold, the clandestine capital of the Resistance, brought new challenges that tested every emotional stride they had made. The nobility loyal to Dorian, dukes and counts who had risked their own lives to oppose the usurper Malachar, looked with ill-disguised disgust upon the sullied widow and her half-blood pups. Your Majesty, Lord Aldrich, one of the most veteran commanders, approached with careful diplomacy. Certainly we understand your gratitude for this woman. Perhaps a generous reward and safe passage to the southern lands would be appropriate. The implied insult caused Dorian's jaw to clench dangerously. These men saw Helen as a commoner who had rendered a service, not as the woman who had literally given new life to their king. They could not see past her mended garments to the true strength residing within her. Helen and her children are my guests, Dorian replied coolly, and will be treated with the respect due to anyone under my protection. But the political pressure was relentless. In the following days, as war strategies were debated and alliances forged, Dorian found himself constantly reminded of his dynastic responsibilities. Subtle suggestions about advantageous political marriages, comments about the need for appropriate heirs, disdainful glances at Helen whenever she appeared. The tension reached its breaking point when Dorian, in a moment of misjudgment born of desperation to protect her, tried to reward her in the only way his royal upbringing had taught him, with gold. This should be enough for you and the children to live comfortably far from here, he said, placing a heavy pouch of coins on the rustic table where Helen was helping Sam with a knee wound. There's safe passage arranged to the neutral lands of the south. You will be safe there. The silence that followed was deafening. Helen slowly raised her eyes, and Dorian saw in them a coldness he had never experienced before. Not anger, something far worse, disappointment. You think, she said with a controlled voice, that this is about money? I am trying to protect you, Dorian insisted, but the words sounded hollow even to his own ears. The coming war is no place for civilians. Helen slowly stood, the pouch of gold still untouched in her hand. Civilians, she repeated, as if tasting a bitter word. Is that what we are to you now? Before he could reply, she threw the pouch at his feet. The coins scattered across the stone floor with metallic sounds that echoed through the strategy hall like accusations. Several nobles paused their conversations to watch the spectacle, some barely concealing satisfied smiles. Loyalty cannot be bought, Helen declared, her voice carrying echoes of the ancient authority that had subdued the attacking wolf. I did not save a king in that forest. I saved a man I thought was worth saving. Apparently, I was wrong. She turned to leave, and something within Dorian shattered. The beast he had kept under rigid control for weeks exploded to the surface, not in fury, but in pure panic. The idea of losing her, of watching her walk out of his life with the same silent dignity she had entered it, was more than he could bear. You are not going anywhere. The command erupted as a roar that made the very stones vibrate. Every person in the hall froze, including Helen, who turned with wide eyes. But it wasn't fear she saw on Dorian's face. It was naked despair and raw vulnerability. Please. His voice broke on the word, all pretense of royal control crumbling. Don't leave me. Not now. Not when I finally understood. Understood what? Helen whispered, taking a hesitant step back toward him. That you are my mate. The confession erupted from him like a breached dam. That these last few months have been the only time in 300 years I have felt truly alive. That Leo holds more courage in his little finger than most of my generals. That Mia possesses a kindness that could heal my kingdom. That Sam has a heart so pure it makes me yearn to be the man you saw that first night. The hall was utterly silent now, bearing witness to an admission that would change the course of history. Dorian, the werewolf king feared across a continent, was on his emotional knees before a woman who had chosen to see him as human when the rest of the world saw him as a monster. You offered me gold because that is what your royal upbringing told you to do, Helen said softly, stepping closer to stand before him. But I never wished to be bought. I wished to be chosen. I choose you, Dorian answered without hesitation. I choose all of you, forever, as my family, as my future, as my salvation. Helen reached out and touched his face, her calloused fingers tracing the line of his jaw with infinite tenderness. The simple contact sent an electric current surging through both of them, drawing a soft gasp. "Then stop trying to protect me, and let me fight by your side." But her words were cut short, as a desperate cry echoed from the courtyard. It was one of the sentries, bringing news that would change everything again. Malachar had discovered their sanctuary, and this time, he brought something that would render any escape impossible. It was Leo who broke the tension, marching toward them with the solemn determination that always characterized him. "We are not leaving," he announced to the entire room. "This is our family now, and families do not abandon one another." Mia and Sam ran to join him, forming a small, resolute army of childhood determination. But it was his next words that truly sealed everyone's fate. "Besides," Leo added with the undeniable logic of childhood, "Mom said you were having nightmares about burning thrones. Who else will take care of you when you get scared at night?" The laugh that escaped Dorian was part sob, part triumphant roar. This 8-year-old boy had summarized in one sentence what he had taken centuries to grasp. True strength came not from commanding fear, but from embracing care. The civil war that followed was brutal and decisive, but it was not fought merely with swords and claws. It was a battle for the very soul of a kingdom, between the old paradigm of governance through terror and a nascent vision of leadership rooted in the genuine protection of the vulnerable. Helen proved to be more than a war companion. She became the emotional strategist Dorian never knew he needed. While he planned military movements, she organized care for the refugees. Where he saw only tactical objectives, she saw shattered families in desperate need of hope. The children, far from being burdens, became powerful symbols of the new order they were striving to forge. Leo began sword training, not out of dynastic obligation, but because he wished to protect others as his family had protected Dorian. Mia organized the orphan children in the refugee camps, creating small networks of support with the natural intuition of someone who understood the profound value of chosen family. Sam, despite his fragile constitution, became the official comforter, offering hugs and stories to wounded soldiers far from home. But it was during the final siege on the castle that the true nature of war revealed itself. Malachar, cornered within his own walls with the last of his loyal followers, played his final card. Not a military weapon, but information that could shatter everything Dorian had built. "Do you want to know why the seal on your precious companion was necessary?" Malachar screamed from the castle walls as Dorian's armies encircled the courtyard. "Ask her about the Silver Valley slaughter. Ask whose blood stains your hands, dear nephew." Helen froze beside Dorian, her sealed memories beginning to stir like waking serpents. Silver Valley. She knew that name, somewhere deep in her soul, where childhood recollections lay buried. "What is he saying?" she whispered, but her own words sounded distant to her. Malachar laughed with cruel triumph. "She is the last heir of the Moonwhite clan, brother. Those pure Omegas father exterminated when you were 15. Your first act as royal heir was to burn that valley until not even grass grew again." The memories hit Helen like an avalanche, flames consuming everything, screams that never ceased to echo in her nightmares. Gentle hands, Thomas's she realized now, carrying her away as her family died. The desperate ritual that sealed her wolf to hide her from execution. She turned to look at Dorian, seeing in his eyes the terrible confirmation of the truth. He remembered. The 15-year-old boy who had remained silent as his father ordered the genocide, too young and too frightened to protest, yet old enough to carry the guilt forever. "You killed my family." The words emerged as a broken whisper. "Helen." Dorian reached for her, but she recoiled as if his touch burned. "My mother, my father, my siblings." Each word was a blade slicing through the bond they had forged. "You killed them." "I was a child," Dorian pleaded. "I didn't know. I had no choice." "We always have a choice." Helen's explosion sent stones tumbling from the ramparts. Her fury finally shattered the magic seal that had suppressed her wolf for so long. The transformation that followed was unlike anything Dorian had ever witnessed. The she-wolf that emerged was not golden like most pure omegas, but white as new snow, a healer wolf, the rarest of all lineages. Her power was not destructive like his own, but restorative. She radiated healing and life, the perfect opposite of his predatory nature. Yet, healing power in the hands of a woman fueled by such raw pain and betrayal could prove more destructive than any weapon of war. "You want your kingdom back?" Helen's voice echoed with supernatural harmonics. "Then finish this. Alone. As you should have done 20 years ago." She turned away, and Dorian physically felt the bond between them stretch, threatening to snap. Not the fated companion link, that was beyond his control now, but the trust, the love, the partnership that had become more precious to him than any crown. It was Leo who intervened, wielding Dorian's training sword with fierce determination. "You won't hurt him," the boy declared, positioning himself between his mother and the man who had become his father in all but blood. "He saved us too, and families forgive." "Leo," Helen began, her voice cracking. "No, Mother. You taught us that hating hurts the hater most. You taught us that some people do terrible things when they are young and scared, but that doesn't mean they can't become better." The boy's eyes, far older than his 8 years, met hers with wisdom beyond his age. "He became better. Because of us. Because of you." Mia and Sam joined their brother, forming a small but unyielding human barricade. "We choose him," Mia said simply. "And we choose you. Family means everyone together." The final battle demanded Helen make a choice no person should ever have to face. Malachar had unleashed dark magic that was poisoning the very land, and the only way to stop it was through the power of a pure Omega healer. But to wield such power while still carrying so much grief and rage could destroy her in the process. Dorian fought through desperate enemies to reach her, but was intercepted by Malachar himself. A duel not just of strength, but of ideologies. The old way of ruling through fear versus the new way of leadership through protection and love. "You were always weak, nephew," Malachar snarled as his claws met Dorian's. "Allowing emotions to cloud your judgment. A king must be feared, not loved." "You are wrong," Dorian retorted, drawing strength not only from his own power, but from the memory of a family who had chosen to save him. Fear breeds subjects, love forges family, and family fights harder than any army. When Malachar finally fell, it was not because Dorian had overpowered him with brute force. It was because Helen, despite every grievance, chose healing over vengeance. Her pure Omega power neutralized the dark magic that was tearing the land apart, but the cost was immense. She collapsed, her life force utterly drained to near oblivion. Dorian reached her first, pulling her into his arms as she faded. "Stay with me," he pleaded. "Please, I cannot lose you now." "I forgive you," Helen whispered, her words barely audible. "I choose to forgive you, for our children, for our future." It was then that the mate bond, which they had both been fighting and embracing, erupted in its full, untamed intensity. Dorian did not use it to dominate her, as he had been taught was appropriate. Instead, he used it to share his own life force, irrevocably linking their destinies. If one died, the other would also perish. It was a forbidden technique, one that would bind them for eternity. "Together," he whispered against her lips, tasting the salt of his own tears mingled with her sweet breath. When their lips met, it was more than a kiss. It was a fusion of souls, a vow sealed with the very essence of life. Helen moaned softly against his mouth, feeling his life force flowing through her like liquid fire, reigniting every cell of her body with an intensity that left her trembling. Whatever comes, we face it together. Helen survived, but the kingdom was forever changed. She did not merely become a queen consort. She became an alpha of healing, integrating orphans and the impoverished into the social fabric of the kingdom. The children, officially adopted by Dorian in a blood ceremony, became the first heirs chosen by merit and character, instead of mere genetics. Leo grew to become not just a warrior, but a protector who understood that true strength came from defending those who could not defend themselves. Mia developed her natural empathy into a gift for diplomacy that could prevent wars before they even began. Sam, despite his physical fragility, became a healer whose gentle touch could soothe both body and soul. But perhaps most importantly, the kingdom learned that their king was not merely a ruler to be feared, but a man who understood what it meant to be vulnerable, to rely on others, to choose love over power when they conflicted. On the night of Helen's coronation, when the ceremonies had concluded and the guests departed, Dorian found himself standing with her on the balcony, overlooking a land now healing from years of civil strife. His arms wrapped around her from behind, drawing her against his broad chest, where she could feel every powerful beat of his heart. "I used to think," he murmured softly, his lips brushing the shell of her ear in a way that sent shivers down her spine. That power meant never needing anyone, never being weak. Helen leaned back into his embrace, feeling the steady thrum of his heart, now matching hers in perfect rhythm. Her hands covered his, intertwining their fingers. "And now?" she whispered, turning her head so her lips nearly brushed his jaw. "Now I know true power comes from choosing vulnerability with the right people, from allowing yourself to be saved when you thought you were beyond salvation." His words were a low rumble against her neck, each syllable sending waves of warmth through her. She turned within his arms, her gaze meeting the man who had transformed from a dying stranger in a snow-laden forest to her partner in all things. When their eyes met, an intensity sparked, making the air between them hum with unspoken promise. "They saved your life," she said, echoing words he had spoken before. "But you gave them a life worth fighting for." As they remained together beneath the stars, enveloped by a family forged not in blood but in choice, Dorian understood he had finally learned royalty's most profound lesson. Sometimes, the greatest act of strength is allowing oneself to be weak. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is accept help. And sometimes, the most powerful person in the room is not the one who commands fear, but the one who inspires love. The wind that once carried only the scent of blood and despair now brought the promise of new beginnings. Helen had taught him that healing was possible even after devastating losses. His children had shown him that family could be chosen as much as it was born. And together, they had proven that sometimes the most improbable salvation comes in the form of strangers willing to risk everything to do what is right. If you cherish this epic tale of a brave widow and the king she saved with pure kindness, subscribe for more epic Lycan King romances. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss new stories about second chances, chosen families, and the transformative power of true love. Remember, sometimes the greatest strength emerges from vulnerability, and the best families are those we choose with our hearts.